have an email from Mark. Rob is a self-appointed nerd that has been since before it became fashionable, and as a Republican who has supported Congressman Kevin Cramer in his endeavors, there is absolutely no excuse that he could give that will make me think that he had the best interest of North Dakota or its residents in mind when he voted in favor of this bill. And he's talking about the Internet Privacy Bill. This was something that we were able to stop from happening while Obama was in office, and I am ticked off beyond belief on this topic. I think a lot of people want an explanation. What was this bill? Why did you vote for it?
Sure. So what the bill was is it was reversing one of Obama's midnight rules that he signed or that his FCC signed on their way out the door. It imposed on Internet service providers. Last year at times so deceiving, but the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, took power, the privacy power, away from the Federal Trades Commission. The Federal Trades Commission has the jurisdiction of over personal privacy, and they have, by the way, a very good and very effective regime and enforcement tool for protecting people's privacy. The FCC, because they have jurisdiction. Well, let's back up even further. Remember when the FCC did what's called net neutrality, they made the Internet a Title II jurisdictional utility, just like a railroad. Title II was created for railroads, and it's applicable to like monopoly utilities, best known as, of course, like your electric utility and your gas company. They applied the same exact regime to the Internet so that they could control this very innovative thing called the Internet. With that, then they followed that up with this privacy rule on their way out the door earlier this year, late last year. And they applied rules that are absolutely so far from the FTC's rules only to the Internet service provider. And I stress Internet service provider because what it doesn't apply the rules to, of course, are the edge providers like a Google, which, of course, is the main search engine, or any other search engine, or a Facebook, which, these are the people that gather personal data. Internet service providers really don't have access to a lot of personal data. And, of course, with encryption, there's less and less. So what we're doing is giving that authority back to the FTC, and then the FCC, under Ajit Pai, the new FCC chairman, who has pledged quite emphatically, by the way, he voted against this rule last year as well, even though he was outnumbered on the commission 3-2, because there are 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans on the commission at the time. He's now the chairman. So he's going to then begin the rule process for harmonizing FCC and FTC rules so the entire Internet ecosystem is treated the same. Privacy is much better protected in that regime than it would be under an FCC, one-size-fits-all sort of regime that frankly creates a lot of confusion. It's duplicative. It just adds cost and burden, compliance burden to the Internet, and frankly runs the risk of being much less safe. And frankly, can really hamper innovation. So, it's easy to sort of wrap the rhetoric that this is anti-privacy, this vote, but the reality is it actually ends up being better for privacy because it harmonizes the rules on the agencies.
Everybody is saying that the big claim that everybody's putting out there is that this allows the ISPs to sell our browsing data. And I got to imagine the ISPs know, unless I'm using some sort of encryption, and even then I think there are ways to get around it. But my Internet service provider knows which websites I'm visiting. I mean, obviously I'm a customer of theirs, and they have that data. And the claim being made is that they could then turn around and sell my browsing data to people who want it. You're saying that's not true?
Well, what I'm saying is, first of all, I do think encryption protects you from that, Rob, for the most part. And you're right. There's always another technology that tries to get around that, but things are getting more encrypted, not less encrypted. The second thing I would say is, as you know, Google and Facebook already do the same exact thing, except they have real sensitive information. They don't just have which websites you're going to. They have all kinds of sensitive information. What this does is this allows the FCC and the FTC to harmonize the rules so that the entire ecosystem is treated equally. So both the FCC and the FTC retain their fundamental authority over consumer privacy on a case-by-case basis. So that's how it's always worked. But the split in the jurisdiction is the result of the FCC's decision to classify these internet service providers as common carriers. That's the regulatory authority or the regulatory term for like a railroad or your local telephone electric company. But that stripped the FTC of its authority over the broadband providers' privacy practices. So the FTC is really the best cop on the beat. That's what it comes down to. We'd much rather have the FTC, who for decades has been in charge of privacy, continue to be in charge of privacy. And if we're going to duplicate anything, we have to duplicate it and harmonize it with the FTC rather than just sort of this one-size-fits-all regime on the internet service providers, who really have far less information than the edge providers.
701-293-9000, 888-970-9329 if you want to join in. Email talk@wday.com or tweet me at Rob Port. One last question. I mean, you can argue, and it's a hard argument to make given how ubiquitous Google and Facebook are online, but the argument people make is that, well, I can install on my computer ad blocking software, or I could just choose not to use a Google or not to use a Facebook. I think, again, how ubiquitous those services are, that's becoming harder and harder to avoid them. But people are saying, I don't have a lot of choices when it comes to my ISP necessarily, but I can choose not to use Facebook or Google or some other company that I think is collecting too much data from me. What do you say to that argument, that there's a fundamental difference between Facebook and Google and the ISPs?
Well, because now that argument is based on the premise that Tom Wheeler, the former FCC chairman, used to impose Title II regulations on the Internet. Remembering that one thing about the Internet, I think we can all admit, is it has been the most innovative thing in certainly in the recent decades, and it has blossomed and bloomed and exploded into an incredible market-based distribution system. And so when you apply this sort of monopoly regulatory regime to it, you lose a lot of that innovation, and that's sort of what's at the core of this. I think you always have to go back to that Title II determination, which I just think was one of the great mistakes. There's so many in the Obama administration, but that's what led to this other thing. And so I think you do have more choices than we sometimes recognize in internet service providers, with wireless and wireline and cable and your telephone company with all kinds of means of distributing information. There's more competition. And we want there to be more competition. We don't want it to be one monopoly provider. And so we don't want to do anything that leads to that. But I want to reassure people, though, that this will ultimately enhance their privacy by having the FCC and the FTC. And you'll see Chairman Pai move on this very quickly. He has a very good statement out today on the passage of the bill, actually, and how he intends to follow up with it, because this guy's I had him in Fargo, in fact, last year for several events, and it'll be much better if we can harmonize the FCC and the FTC rules, maintain their jurisdiction, but harmonize their rules for the entire ecosystem of the Internet.
All right, I appreciate it. Appreciate your time as always, Congressman, and I hope that answers everybody's questions. There's a lot of concern about this out there, though, so.
Well, that's because it's so easy to demagogue. Oh, my God, they're going to grab your privacy. By the way, I always find it interesting, too, because I don't want anybody to have a lot of my private information either. I also long ago gave up on thinking that they didn't have it, of course, because every time I download a new game or a new app or anything, some people are probably more judicious about reading all those things before you push. I agree. But we want to protect privacy, and we'll be able to do it much better, I think, under the new regime.